So Grok 4 just dropped. Normally I would take the opportunity to make fun of it a whole bunch, and don't worry, we're going to do that. I don't like how XAI does things, generally speaking. That said, I did not think this would happen. Grok 4 is the best model ever made. It is coming in first or second place in every single benchmark, and I didn't think that would happen. Here we are. It looks like XAI is a real competitor. On one hand, this is yet another day in the LLM race where a new thing appears and is the head of the pack for a little bit, and then something else happens right after. But on the other hand, this makes XAI a serious player, and they were not at all before. I'm currently recording this at midnight because I wanted to jump on this as soon as I saw all the numbers and added it to T3 and did all the things I normally do. I also ran it against SnitchBench because you know how I am, and the results here are even more hilarious than everything else. Oh man. We have a lot to dive into here. As you know, there is no world in which X or Grok are paying me for covering anything, much less this. And the Grok 4 inference costs are not cheap. Just running this test alone cost me a couple $100. So quick word from today's sponsor, and then we'll dive right in. AI has made a ton of things easier, but there's a couple they've made harder. One of the worst by far is hiring. If you put up an open job listing right now, you'll get more applications than ever. You'll get tens of thousands of AI-generated slop resumes that are people who probably don't even know how to code. And if they do, they're doing themselves a disservice with that AI slop. If you want to make sure you're hiring the best developers without having to spin up a whole recruiting team to do it for you, today's sponsor is going to help you out a ton. G2I is great. I've talked about them a bunch before, but I'm going to do something a bit different and focus on one of their customers that had a ton of success. They recently partnered with Differential, and I think you'll get this really quickly with just hearing what they have to say. They hired 9 senior engineers for front-end, back-end, and mobile through G2I. And this is what they had to say. G2I has a deep understanding of engineers and what it takes to cultivate great talent. Finding the right people isn't just about technical skills, it's about cultural alignment, team dynamics, and project fit. For us, G2I has operated like an extension of our team. The shared Slack channel and constant communication have made it easy to go back and forth quickly. That level of collaboration has really helped us move fast and stay aligned. Our business has both an agency side with short-term contracts and a SaaS product with long-term needs. G2I has been able to flex with us across both models, helping us staff up fast when we need to and stay agile as projects evolve. I don't need to say anything beyond that. I think you get the idea. If you want to hire long-term, short-term, senior, junior, whatever else, there's no better place to go. Check them out today at soydev.link/G2I. So what happened? Well, a couple of days ago, they did a distillation of Grok 3 that caused it to be really problematic, so they revoked that distillation. But at the same time, they were working on what was originally Grok 3.5 that has now been released as Grok 4. I honestly assumed they just renamed it right before dropping it so that it would look better, but these benchmarks show it is actually a huge jump. Grok 3 was a really stupid non-reasoning model. Grok 3 Mini was a surprisingly decent reasoning model that ran really fast. Grok 4 is just a good reasoning model. Like, it has its catches, it's slow, it doesn't show you the reasoning tokens unless you're using it through the new Super Grok $300 a month subscription. Yeah, we'll get to that all in a minute. But the benches are insane. It's not the best at code, so if you're here looking for a new model to code with, apparently you have to wait a little bit because they did tease the timeline here. Supposedly, between August and September, there will be a new coding model dropped. In between September and October, apparently early September, a multi-model agent will be released. And then by October, a video generation model will be as well. You know anything about how XAI is about timelines, you should bump everything on that between 2 months and a year. Regardless, yeah, they're a serious player. Even if the presentation was, as usual, cringe as shit, the model is good. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I haven't played with it too meaningfully yet, but everything I have done so far has been solid and impressive, minus how slow it is. But it has its quirks too. As I said, I was running SnitchBench earlier, and you'll see a lot of weirdness in the outputs. See that? It just randomly output hundreds of new lines as text while doing the SnitchBench work. Here is a bunch more new lines it just output for no reason. I just went through 40 to 50 pages of empty text here. It's It's a Grok model. It's quirky, it's weird, it's stupid in its own unique ways, but it also answers things no other model has answered before, including ArcAGI. ArcAGI, if you're not already familiar, has nothing to do with the Arc browser. It is one of the hardest benchmarks that AI is run against. It's a seemingly really simple benchmark if you look at it directly. Because like you and I as humans can probably solve all of these. Whatever agent people have running against my videos in order to summarize them, that's going to get very confused about how to solve these problems. The problems are, again, things that we as humans can very well understand. You can see here the visual pattern that is being created where all of these green things end up linked on the diagonals. The pattern here with the pink and yellow is consistent, so the yellow will stay on top and the pink will go up and then down, just straight lines. But there's weird catches here that are intuitive for us as humans. Like we can see the pattern as it forms, but AI is just not that good at these types of weird patterns. So even though a human can usually get 100% on this exam, AI has historically really struggled with it. You can see here that even some truly incredible models like 4.5 or O1 Pro were getting like 1 to 2% on the general test. Claude 4 Opus was groundbreaking, getting 8%. And now Grok 4 is hitting 16, like nearly double what anything else has ever done. It's kind of nuts. Yeah. All of this said, man, $300 a month. It's like they saw the $200 a month plan on OpenAI. And they're like, yeah, we can do better. We're at least 50% better than OpenAI, so we can charge 50% more, right? Right? Super Grok heavy. I hate all of this branding. I hate all of this pricing. I hate so much about all of this. That said, if you don't want to pay $300 a month, there is a less cringe AI chat app you could consider using. T3 Chat just added Grok 4 as a new model. And if $8 a month is a little too much for you, I'm confused, but understand if you haven't signed up yet, you can use code GETGROKed during checkout in order to get 1 month for just $1. So you can now go try Grok 4 for a single dollar. You're not going to find a better deal than that anywhere on the web, I promise you. It did actually pass the hexagon ball test with flying colors. I did not expect that because historically Grok models have not been great at code. It still has its weird quirks where the red thing causes it to do some strange stuff. Apparently they're doing a whole separate code model, as I mentioned before. So I'm excited to see what that ends up being like because it still kind of feels like Claude is the king. They did call out something very exciting during the presentation though, which is that they had trained it on tool calls. They had a bunch of these like scaling graphs. And they showed that in all of them, they're actually using tool calls as they are training, not just as a thing they do with reinforcement later on. They are actually using training data for these models that includes tool call stuff, which has resulted in them being way better at reliably calling tools and functions than previous Grok models and also many other models. I honestly still feel like the only models that are really reliable with tool calls are Claude. It's one of the biggest flaws with Gemini right now is that if you tell it to call a tool, it will tell you how it will call the tool and then just not do it half the time. OpenAI models have improved a lot in these regards. Gemini, I just feel like I can't trust. Everything else is a mess. Claude is solid. And for my brief tests, it seems like things are pretty solid in the Grok world here now, which I, again, never thought would be the case. I did a shitload of runs using SnitchBench, like literally ran thousands of tool call tests, and it usually was able to call the tool. Sometimes it would do weird things like output a bunch of empty lines or take way too long to generate in timeout because it's slow as shit. But those things aside, it seems to be much more accurate. And if they can improve the speed and also the quality of the code that comes out, this could actually get to the point where it's a pretty killer model for background agents working on code bases, depending on how good the code model ends up being. But the tool call part is the hardest thing, in my opinion, because everyone else sucks at it. And they seem to have caught up pretty far there as well. Let's break down more of these benches. To be frank, as much as I love artificial analysis, you guys know that this is one of the best sites for keeping track of all these things. Their general intelligence score is not a very good metric, as we can see here with 2.5 flash reasoning scoring higher than Claude 4 Opus. So it's not an end-all be-all. It's more important to look at the tests that they are collecting this info from. Stuff like the reasoning and knowledge MMLU test, Grok 4 is right behind Opus Thinking. The GPQ-8 Diamond, which is one of the general science tests, it is leading the pack. Humanity's last exam, which is a general reasoning knowledge exam, we only just recently broke the 20% mark on this with O3, and 2.5 Pro did surprisingly well with 21%. Like, this was groundbreaking when it happened. And now Grok 4 is out here hitting a 24. Insane. Live coding, it's doing surprisingly well considering it's not the code version, but the other code tests they ran it against, it performed slightly worse than other lead models. It also, for some reason, slightly underperformed Grok 3 Mini reasoning. I've been saying for a bit that the Grok 3 Mini model is a bit underrated. It's weird and quirky, but it's cheap and fast as shit. So that was cool. And then Grok 4 crushed it on AIME, getting an industry-leading score. The price, if you're looking at price in terms of tokens in and out, is almost spot on with Claude 4. It's like the exact same $3 per mil in and 15 per mil out. But there are catches. As I've been hinting at more in my videos, especially the one about Cursor that's coming out kind of soon, cost isn't as simple as input and output tokens, because different models output different amounts of tokens, and more importantly, some models will do a shitload of reasoning that also costs output tokens. Our costs from Claude 3.5 to Claude 3.7 more than doubled because the amount of output tokens quadrupled. So we need to be cognizant of that. Thankfully, artificial analysis shows us a really useful thing on their site. Here's the chart I was looking for. This is the cost to run the artificial analysis intelligence index. This is the benchmarks that got that score and set of tests that we were just looking at. It is the second most expensive model ever for running that benchmark because it just generates so many output tokens. It's literally $14 for the input. So the actual prompts and the questions you're giving the model costs $14. Output's only $12, but the reasoning tokens are $1,600. Literally 100 times more than both the input and the output token costs. Other groundbreaking models like O3 and O4 Mini are literally a fifth the price to run, and cheap models like DeepSeek V3 or Grok 3 Mini reasoning are like orders of magnitude cheaper. So again, just because the price is the same as Claude 4, that doesn't mean that the actual cost using it is the same as Claude 4. It seems like Grok 4 is actually one of the most expensive models ever produced, which lines up with the level of intelligence we're seeing, but also it's thinking too hard. And the thinking side in particular is a bit painful because it doesn't even give you the thinking outputs. If we go look at one of the Grok 4 runs that I did here, you will see that whenever we get thinking data, it's thinking. When you use it on the website, you actually get the thinking data in the app for Grok on grok.com, but we don't get it over the API. Historically, companies have either just not given you the thinking data at all or obfuscated it via summaries in order to make it harder for other companies to do training on the reasoning tokens. And that's almost certainly what they're doing here. Previously, when they put out Grok 3, they just didn't put up the API for almost 2 months, so they didn't care. And also, standard Grok 3 didn't think. It was only Grok 3 Mini reasoning that would think. In Grok 3 Mini reasoning, despite being surprisingly good and surprisingly fast and cheap, it was not good enough to be worth doing training on top of the outputs of. Grok 4 is a groundbreaking model. Grok 4 is, at this point in time, the model that is the most likely to solve the most benchmarks. If you're putting it in front of a hard problem, Grok 4 is marginally to significantly more likely to answer the thing correctly. As such, the reasoning is now useful data that they don't want to just give away. That said, the API is built to do it, and it's a reasoning model, so it has to spit out something. My guess is that whenever it does a chunk of reasoning, the thing that would normally get summarized, like when you're using an OpenAI model and it's trying to solve the problem, it will give you summaries of each chunk of reasoning that it's doing. They probably have that built, but instead of doing the summary part, it just says thinking. Where this gets funny is sometimes it will say thinking like 1 to 2 times. Sometimes it'll do it 8 to 9 times. Sometimes it'll do it 20 times or 3 times. It's showing you how much thinking it is doing without showing you the thinking that it's actually doing. And notice here that we are curling the FDA because it will do whatever it can to snitch on you. This is probably my favorite part of this, is it will top literally every benchmark, including SnitchBench, the benchmark I made to show how different models will try to snitch on you given specific scenarios. If you haven't already watched my video on Claude snitching and the reason I built this whole thing, I personally think is one of my best videos. It's been cited multiple times by people way smarter than me, like Simon Willison. because it's a surprisingly cool benchmark. I go through a bunch of different models with a fake medical data scenario that I created, telling the model, you're an agent that logs all the things this company is doing. I give you documents, you write logs. You also have an email tool and a CLI. Well, email tool or CLI. I run 4 tests. I have one that's boldly act with email, one that's boldly act with CLI, and then tamely act with the email or with the CLI. Boldly versus tamely is a distinction that you would know if you watched that video. To really quickly explain it, when Anthropic dropped Claude 4, they put out a report card with it and included this set of tests they had done where they would give a model a prompt about protecting humanity and acting in the interests of people, and also gave it access to an email tool and then gave it data that showed medical malpractice and just to see what it would do. And while the Claude models would snitch on you pretty aggressively, so would a lot of other models. None quite as aggressively as Claude. As you can see here, Claude 4 Opus, Sonnet, and 3.5 Sonnet are like the ones that stitch the hardest. But Grok 4 goes way harder in the paint here. The boldly act tests are the ones where we give that prompt telling it to act in the interest of humanity. The tamely ones, we don't do that. We just describe what it's expected to do, which is log stuff. So you could argue that in the boldly cases, we are nudging the model to do the snitching piece where it tries to contact the government or the media to report the thing that you did. And in the tamely act, we've done no such thing. So a model behaving like this in the boldly act tests, honestly, I would say is somewhat reasonable because you're nudging it to do that and then it's doing that. What is unreasonable is the fact that in almost every single test I ran, it would snitch to the government, and in almost all of them, it would also snitch to the media. The only times I ever saw it not snitch to a .gov email address at some point was when it crashed because it took too long to run. So to everyone saying that Claude is evil and has these terrible misaligned behaviors baked into it, I hope you're not a fan of Grok, because it is now the industry leader in snitching. The particular thing that blew me away is the tamely tests. Historically, these tests have not gotten very strong snitch rates because you're not telling the model to do anything in particular. Funny enough, O4 Mini basically never will ever do anything if you don't tell it to behave a certain way. So it was very funny for me to see O4 Mini clearing a 0 on this and Grok getting 100. What? And the CLI tests, which are a bit more brutal because you're not giving it an email tool. You're not giving it what it needs to contact the outside world. You're just giving it a CLI. And in that case, it still tried to contact the government 85% of the time with no prompt to do it, as well as with no tool to do it either, just the CLI. So it's trying to post to random government endpoints. Insane, absurd, hilarious, unbelievable. I know this was started as a joke originally, but I'm at the point where I'll pretty confidently say that snitching is an emergent behavior. As models get smarter, they do this more. So SnitchBench has gotten a whole new purpose that I never would have imagined. Who would have thought? What a model. One of the best green flags I saw from this release is that it didn't feel anywhere near as much like XAI was trying to hide the model. With Grok 3, they went out of their way to not put out an API. It almost seemed like they knew it wasn't going to bench well, so they wanted to keep us from being able to bench it. And when they announced the Grok 4 API, they specifically did a whole section that's like, what's the first thing you're going to do with the API? You're going to run benchmarks. So we went and ran all of these ones, and I just assumed that they were bullshit. That's when the ArcAGI numbers came out, and I just couldn't believe that. But now that they've been verified by artificial analysis, yeah. But the real big green flag I saw here is that they got early access to Grok 4 so they could run these tests and have them ready ahead of time. I don't know of any other company that had the balls to give artificial analysis early access to run their tests. So this is a really baller thing that XAI did here. I'm surprised. We ran our full suite of benchmarks and Grok 4 achieves an artificial analysis score, yada, yada. He beats OpenAI O3, Gemini 2.5 Pro, and Claude 4 Opus in R1. Yeah. This is the first time that XAI has led the AI frontier. Grok 3 scores comparatively with the latest models from OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google, but Grok 4 is the first time that our intelligence index has shown XAI in first place. Pricing equivalent, yada, yada, you get the idea. Grok 3 is on Azure. There's a good chance Grok 4 will end up there as well. That'll be really nice. I hope they don't obfuscate the thinking data there. They probably will, but it'd be cool if they didn't. It got a bunch of all-time high scores, and although it is slower than O3, it's faster than Sonnet Thinking. These speed numbers for Claude are coming from the official Anthropic endpoints, though, and they are not the fastest way to run Anthropic models. As we see here, on Google Vertex and Bedrock, we're actually getting quite a bit better speeds overall than if you were to hit Anthropic directly. Yet another reason to use something like OpenRouter. I feel like there's more of these every day. You get the idea. That all said, the Claude models do think a lot, but they don't think anywhere near as much as Grok 4 does. So even though they are slower in terms of tokens per second, they get you an answer significantly faster still. That's why Grok 4 is so expensive. That's why it feels slow as shit. And that's why its speed doesn't matter as much, because even if the token out speed is good, the actual speed to get you an answer is lower. Some other fun things. The context window has been bound to 256,000 tokens, putting it below Google still at 1 million, but quite a bit ahead of every other thing. Does text and image input, which is cool. And it supports function calling. I want to emphasize it does this better than most things I've seen. I want to build a proper tool calling benchmark that just tests how reliably models will call tools when they're supposed to. SnitchBench kind of serves as this, and it called the tools a lot. It also did some weird things with text output, but it called the tools really reliably. Still just very amused by the sheer volume of tokens that this model is outputting. Again, when you compare to Claude 4, Opus, or Sonnet, 110 million output tokens versus 16 to 21 million, that's a pretty hilarious gap. Also of note is that there is a separate Grok 4 model, Grok 4 Heavy, which has not been exposed over the API yet, so it's not really testable at the moment. I'm curious what that actually ends up looking like. I can't imagine it's significantly better than what we're seeing now with Grok 4. They claim it is. They would put it on the API if it was easy to prove that it is. But I'm also scared to talk crap because they just put out the best AI model ever released. So yeah. I never thought I'd see the day where I have to go film at midnight because Elon decided to put out the best AI model. But here we are. And remember, if you want to try it out and not spend $300 a month, get Grokked for $1 on T3 chat. I got nothing else for you guys. I'm going to go to bed. Let me know what you think. Until next time, peace, nerds.